Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Paramahamsa, Parvadikacharya, Ashtoto, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Parvadikacharya, Ashtoto, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai, Shri Isopanisad ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. I forgot to mention it's Martin Luther King's holiday today. That's why there's a parade going on up in LA. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 20th day of January 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from the Sri Isopanisad translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are going to be finishing up Mantra 11 today. Vidyam cha yas tadvedo bhayang saha avidyayam hrityum tirtva vidyayam itamashnute vidyam cha yas tadvedo bhayang saha avidyayam hrityum tirtva vidyayam itamashnute vidyam cha yas tadvedo bhayam saha avidyayam hrityum tirtva vidyayam itamashnute vidyam cha yas tadvedo bhayam saha avidyayam hrityum tirtva vidyayam itamashnute vidyam cha yas tadvedo bhayang saha avidyayam hrityum tirtva vidyam itamashnute. Translation. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So we're going down. I'm going to complete the purport. Prabhupada writes, This does not mean that all activities for the maintenance of the body should be stopped. So what does this refer to on the previous paragraph? On the contrary, we must develop the culture of spiritual knowledge so that we may become completely free from the cruel hands of death. But this does not mean that all activities for the maintenance of the body should be stopped. There is no question of stopping activities, just as there is no question of wiping out one's temperature altogether when trying to recover from a disease. To make the best use of a bad bargain is the appropriate expression. The culture of spiritual knowledge necessitates the help of the body and mind. Therefore, maintenance of the body and mind is required if we are to reach our goal. The normal temperature should be maintained at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And the great sages and saints of India have attempted to do this by a balanced program of spiritual and material knowledge. They never allow the misuse of human intelligence for diseased sense gratification. Human activities, diseased by a tendency toward sense gratification, have been regulated in the Vedas under the principles of salvation. This system employs religion, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. But at the present moment, people have no interest in religion or salvation. They have only one aim in life, sense gratification. And in order to achieve this end, they make plans for economic development. Misguided men think that religion should be maintained because it contributes to economic development, which is required for sense gratification. Thus, in order to guarantee further sense gratification after death in heaven, there is some system of religious observance. But this is not the purpose of religion. The path of religion is actually meant for self-realization, and economic development is required just to maintain the body in a sound, healthy condition. A man should lead a healthy life with a sound mind just to realize vidya, true knowledge, which is the aim of life. This life is not meant for working like an ass or for culturing avidya for sense gratification. The path of vidya is most perfectly presented in Srimad Bhagavatam, which directs a human being to utilize his life to inquire into the absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized step by step as Brahman, Paramatma, and finally Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. The absolute truth is realized by the broad-minded man who has attained knowledge and detachment by following the 18 principles of the Bhagavad Gita described in the purport to Mantra 10. The central purpose of these 18 principles is the attainment of transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead. Therefore, all classes of men are encouraged to learn the art of devotional service to the Lord. The guaranteed path to the aim of Vidya is described by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which we have presented in English as the Nectar of Devotion. The culture of Vidya is summarized in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.14 in the following words. Tasmade kena manasa bhagavan sarpatam patihi shotavya kirtitavyascha deyak pujascha nityada. Therefore, with one-pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. Unless religion, economic development, and sense gratification aim toward the attainment of devotional service to the Lord, they are all simply different forms of nescience, as Isopanisad indicates in the following mantras. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this, as in several of the mantras of the Isopanisad, is contrasting actual knowledge with ignorance. Vidya and avidya. Now here it says one could learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side. The idea is that we have to know what nescience is so we can avoid it. Otherwise, we'll be entrapped. Because, as Prabhupada mentions here, there's all kinds of false religions out there that are pretending to be coming down from God, and that really lead one to economic development and sense gratification. And there are, of course, also fake bhakti organizations. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has named 12 different, in his time, I don't know if there are more now, less, 12 different upasampradayas. We know that whatever we do needs to be following in the line of the sampradaya, our disciplic succession. Otherwise, we'll get off kilter. And that sampradaya is very strongly protected by the great acharyas who appear within it. Lord Chaitanya, of course, came. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He doesn't need to be in a sampradaya, but he showed by example, since he took the role of a devotee and teacher and acharya, of taking initiation from Ishwar Puri. And also he took sannyas from Keshava Bharati. Actually, he initiated him before he took sannyas. That's another thing. But his main initiation is understood to be with Ishwar Puri, which is in the line from Madhvacharya. So that's why we're the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. And but that line, during the time of after Lord Chaitanya's disappearance, gradually it became confused, or because of the detailed explanation in Lord Krishna's rasa dance in the books of the Goswamis, those who are not interested really in purification, but in higher sense gratification, they distorted the teachings, and we had the whole Prakrasa Sahajiyas, and the Baals and the Owls, and the whole bunch of them, who didn't accept the injunction of the Shastra or the example of the Acharyas, but they had their own idea how they're going to practice Chaitanya Bhakti. And during the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he came on the scene, Chaitanya Vaishnavism had been eclipsed by all these. The name had been put into the gutter because people had thought it was just an excuse for lascivious activity. That's how things had gotten. And so through Bhaktivinoda Thakur's efforts, and of course his exalted son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, Chaitanya Vaishnavism has been brought back to its absolute purity, and the proper understanding of the conjugal rasa has been made very clear. But it was a big job, it's a big effort. And those tendencies are still around. Just as we see even in the Catholic Church or the Christian religion, how there were a series of corrupt popes during the Middle Ages. There's what we have now, the prosperity theology. If you're rich, that means you must be saintly because you're getting the blessings of the Lord. Whereas the poor are, reaping their rewards for being sinful. Rather than, what Jesus preached, take care of the poor, the whole thing, So, that's what Nirmantra Prabhu was talking about last night. It's a major concern in any Shastra. What is real Dharma? And how can we know? What is the definition? How can you recognize it? So you don't get cheated. And therefore, at the very beginning, we have in the Bhagavatam, second verse of the first chapter of the first canto, Dharma projita kaitavo tra. Here, tra, in the Bhagavatam, right at the outset, we're throwing out far away all of the cheating religions. And what is that cheating religion? The definition is there. Any religion that's aimed at some personal aggrandizement, even up to the point of liberation. When you think about it, and I've read in Prabhupada's books, that tendency for liberation is shown by the universal attempt to minimize the suffering in this world. If you think about it, every species, every individual in every species is trying to do that. Maximize the happiness, minimize the suffering. Right? Dukkha, what is it? Sukha something, and dukkha hatyai. Dukkha hatyai means to destroy the suffering, and sukha to increase it. But the nine Yogendras explain that on the material side, even though that effort is going on, you always fail. You're happy, your material happiness is blown to bits just by the force of time and circumstance and your karma. and suffering comes at you unavoidably, one way or another. Either from outside or from inside, your mind, your body, adibhautik, adidaivik, adiatmik, you know what they are. So, that process is universal. When you try to bring religion into the service of that motive of increasing your own personal happiness, sense gratification, it may be subtle, but it's still sense gratification, and relieving you from life's miseries, then that's cheating religion. That's not going to help you get back to Godhead, and it's not pleasing to Krishna. So we need to learn the process of nescience and knowledge side by side. And that's why you find in the Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter. 16th chapter, he begins with a very nice list of all the saintly qualities, which requires so much explanation. Probably there's a nice long purport there. And then he begins describing the demonic qualities. Because if we don't know what they are, then we're liable to be victimized by them or by others, showing that. One of the demonic qualities I always like to point out, the first one mentioned is damba. Now, damba is pride, but it's like false pride, meaning that you're pretending to be something you're not. And it's characteristic of the demons that they pretend to be religious. That's one of the things, because that's a status in society. I want to have that status, but I don't really believe in God. I believe I'm God. But I'll just go to church and do the rituals, but on the side we'll be arranging for sense gratification. So that's a central quality. And when you think about it, it is the attack on the last leg of religion that's even prominent in this age, which is, you remember what it is? There's four? Truthfulness. There's four principles. Prabhupada really emphasizes these in the first canto. Austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. And when you think about them, if someone has those and you're a little bit pious, you become you be respectful of that person. If you see someone who undertakes austerity in order to do good to others, even on a material level, this person becomes respected. Mercy, of course. Cleanliness, is a sign of mode of goodness, of caring about others and everything. And of course, truthfulness. Truthfulness is essential for any society to function properly. Otherwise, if everyone is doubting and everyone's trying to run a game on me, how can you have a flourishing society? It's just a society of the cheaters and the cheated. You see how the cheated and the cheated, that's exactly personifies this idea of untruthfulness as becoming more and more widespread. So that understanding nescience and transcendental side by side, then you can say, oh, that's a symptom of nescience. Even the mode of ignorance, when you see the modes, someone is dirty, they're unclean, and dirty and untruthful. This is the kind of person you don't want to buy something from, right? Because they're going to try to cheat you. So we have to understand that. So now, in the portion of the purport that we read, Prabhupada is emphasizing that, what does he say here? The advance of material knowledge and neglected the most important part of life. But here's Isopanisad herein warns that we must not follow this dangerous path leading to death, ignoring real consciousness. Because after all, the body becomes paraphernalia for serving. Just like we have so much paraphernalia that we take, but don't want more than that. Don't strive for more than that. That leads to discord in society, and everything begins from that. Claiming proprietorship over something that is not truly ours. So recognizing that we ourselves are gods, not in gods, gods with an apostrophe, we belong to God, and therefore everything we do is meant to be in His service, just like the hand. Everything the hand does is meant to be in my service. If it starts doing independent stuff, that's a problem. Or it doesn't function, right? It's diseased. So we're in the diseased condition now, having forgotten or ignored, turned our back on God and forgotten Him, and become absorbed in His external energy and trying to be little gods, exploiting it and enjoying it. So Krishna consciousness means to this is a kind of disease. It's kind of a fever. It's a material fever. And Prabhupada gives that analogy at the end here, or in this purport. The idea of that sense gratification is kind of a fever, the desire for more and more and more. And Krishna consciousness is meant to bring it back to the normal, to 98.6, is that you just get what you need and direct that sense gratification energy. That's like the pleasure energy. This is a perverted reflection of the Ladini Shakti, our desire to enjoy this world. And so we need to direct that back toward Krishna. First of all, by thinking about him. That's the first thing. That's why it always begins with man mana, maya vesha mano yema, fix your mind on me. Because Krishna is all attractive. And when we actually fix our mind on him even a little bit, the purification takes place very powerfully. And we come to the point of actually desiring do some service. We're doing the service without knowing it. As soon as you chant Hare Krishna, that's the most important service. You're glorifying Krishna, you're again turning your attention back toward him, however imperfectly, because the mind, of course, is distracted by so many previous things. But that as soon as that happens, when one thinks of Krishna, chant the holy name especially, the purification takes place very powerfully, Krishna from within the heart. And then the struggle goes on. Think of struggle. Sadhana means struggle. It means effort. Yati, one has to strive. Because the conditioning is so long and so deep-rooted in our consciousness that even if we're going along very nicely, there's so many different tendencies that are buried that could come out if we're not vigilant and very strict in our sadhana. So that's what Prabhupada is talking about here. And we're going to, in the next verse, I think it is, yes, this idea of sambhutyam rataha. This word rataha is used in the Bhagavad Gita in the same context. It's kind of an idiomatic use of the word engaged in the sense of falsely engaged. This was used a few verses back, or mantras back. These long purports. I think it was 10 or 9. Yeah, actually I looked it up. Here it is. It was 9. Andam tamak prabhashanti ye vidyam upasate. Andam tamak prabhashanti ye avidyam upasate. Tato bhuya evate tamo yahu vidyayam rataha. Those who engage in the culture of nescience activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Because this is all about nescience and knowledge, side by side. That's the topic of this portion of the Isha. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. That's the rataha. Vidyayam rataha, you see. Now that is used in the Vedavada rataha. Have you ever heard that phrase? Yamimam pushpa, this is second chapter, I don't know exact verse. Pushpitam vacham prapadancha vipashyata Vedavada rata apata nanyana siti varana. That imam pushpitam vacham. Those who say that the flowery words of the Vedas, what are those flowery words? The words in the Karmakanda section describing the wonderful fruits of sacrifice, material sacrifice to the gods. Taking you to Indraloka, and detailed descriptions of Nandanana garden and how you can enjoy there with the nymphs for so many millions of years. That's pushpitam vacha, flowery words. And those who are in ignorance, they say that's all the Vedas are about. They don't turn their attention toward the Upanishads and what to speak of the Vedanta Sutra and the Puranas of Bhagavatam. That's what religion really is, you see. And so he calls them Vedavada Rata, so-called knowers of the Vedas. That so-called is really what it's about. So those who engage in the culture of so-called knowledge, in other words, they're not just stupid, they're not just the ordinary Joe sitting in front of the six-pack, that we know is nescience, right? But these are the highfalutin philosophers and people who can really turn a phrase, and even those who know the so-called know the Vedas. But that's even more worse. That's worse. That's more dangerous for society. Because this is why it's described in this age. This verse we should know, it's right in the first chapter of Bhagavatam. Why are people so unqualified in this age? Prayena pashatak sabya kalavasmin yuge jana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya yupadvatai. You may have heard the verse before. You may not know what it all means. Prayena. For the most part, People in this world have these qualities in this age. They don't live very long. That's the first thing. Alpa ayusha. And you need a certain amount of time in your body in order to attain salvation. But if you don't live that long, it's more difficult. Manda. They're lazy in the matter of self-realization. Very eager in the matter of sense gratification. And even if they're interested in higher matters, sumanda matayo, the chances are very high they'll go somewhere and get misguided, cheated by someone who looks religious. They don't know anything. Manda bhagya, and therefore they're basically unfortunate. And upadra, the mind is always disturbed. Unless you can get some peace of mind in order to focus on these higher matters, if it's always, and that's the big symptom now, even more than before, with all of this social media and the phone everywhere. Even people come into class and checking out the phone. I have to say, no cell phones in class. It's a lot crazier than it used to be. When I joined, we had tape cassettes. There was no phone. I mean, not everyone had a phone, and what to speak of the internet and everything. And so, in a sense, from outside it looks like you guys being brainwashed, but from inside it says, "Oh, this is like a real space where you can focus." Everything was Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. You walk through the wall, through the corridors, and there's Prabhupada playing kirtan and everything like that. So now it's everywhere. It's much more difficult to have peace of mind and concentration. So with all of these disqualifications, how are we going to advance? Well, that's why Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya, to give us this powerful process of Harinam Sankirtan. And when you read the CC, you realize that dancing is always mentioned. That's an important part of it. It's dancing and chanting. And that enables the mind, even against the will, even if you're disturbed, if you get into a kirtan with the rhythm and the music and on and the attractiveness of the holy name, you got to make advancement. Get a taste, some kind of taste. So, Vidyaya Mrtaha, and in the next verse from the one we just studied, 12, he's going to talk about Sambhutyam Rataha. And Sambhutya means the absolute. So those who are engaged in worship, so-called worship of the absolute, in other words, the fake religionists, they're the real danger in the society. That's the Sumanda Matayo, misguided. So you can see by all of this emphasis on what is real knowledge and what is nescience, this is a key element. And this is what Prabhupada really came to teach and came to give, is a genuine article. That's why it's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because Bhagavad Gita had been present, but it had been misinterpreted, even mistranslated, and no one became a devotee from all those Bhagavad Gitas, even in the Western culture. The British had translated it, they were interested, but they had no idea what they were doing. So Prabhupada came to give Bhagavad Gita as it is, and as we know, it's wholly and solely meant to bring you to the point of surrender, of bhakti. That's the essence of it. When he comes to the end, he gives us the confidential knowledge again, at the end of the 18th chapter, that he gave at the end of the 9th chapter. And it's all very simple. It all boils down to manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. That's it. If you can do that. Think of me. It's always the first. Put your mind on me and become my devotee. Some people put their mind on Krishna and try to merge, or whatever. But become my devotee, that's a big topic. How to become the devotee? We have nectar of devotion. We'll have a whole culture of that. Worship me, bow down low, means recognize my supremacy in every field of your life at every moment. And worship me with the other devotees. That's the whole program. Yeah. Paribhas Sutra. There's something called the Paribhas Sutra. Well, there are 4 verses in the Gita that are considered, like in Bhagavatam, we have the Chatur Shloki Bhagavatam, the original Bhagavatam spoken by Krishna to Brahma, and then he expanded on it. So there are 4 verses in the 10th chapter that encompass that. I mean, it's the same idea, but this is all part of sadhana. In other words, this is all abhideya. These 4 verses cover Sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. Because what he does, at the latter part of this verse, he says, you will certainly come to me, I promise you this. Because it hasn't been referred to that, but it's certainly essential because it's repeated. A verse is repeated from in 934 and 1865. He's repeating it. And so, and 1865 is followed by 1866, which is the final essence of the whole thing. Sarva dharma padajya mamekam sharanam. Now it's interesting, he says, give up all dharmas there, and just surrender unto me. A dharma, as we were discussing last night, it is meant to bring you from point A to point B. It's a process, includes sadhana, bhakti, and a whole way of life. But it's meant to bring you to the point of pure devotion to what Hokshaja, remember that nice name, which means, he didn't run through, but Prabhupada does. It's very nice to contemplate how these words are put together. Adha Aksha Ja. Now Ja is part of the word Janma, which means to produce. And what is being produced? With the Aksha, with the eyes, and other material senses. And in other words, what you get, what the knowledge that you can glean from that method, from just your own investigation through your senses and your own mind, that's called akshaja knowledge. But it's relative knowledge. And Krishna is beyond all that. That's why it says adha, means he pushes it down. In other words, he's up and that's down. It's a way of saying the transcendental Lord, which is what Prabhupada transcendental literally means beyond the reach of your senses and mind. So, but it's in the context of dharma, right? So the whole question is, what's that supreme dharma by which the soul can become supremely satisfied? This is the caveat. The soul can't be satisfied completely unless it comes to the point of eternal happiness, because the soul is eternal. So what we get is these little blips of sense gratification. Even dharma engaged in for that, even if it's going to Indraloka for 1,000,000 years, that's still temporary. So the soul cannot be completely satisfied by that materialistic, cheating dharma, kaitava dharma. So that the dharma ends up being, the definition there. It's a beautiful verse, as he pointed out. Yato bhakti hokshaje. That dharma, that activity by which which engenders devotional service, bhakti, love of Krishna, or love of the transcendent Lord, which is unmotivated by any material motivation. Now, any activity you perform, spiritual or material, has to have some motivation. But this word ahoitaki has come to mean no material cause or motivation, and unbroken. So now, you say, well, okay, I'm religious. This is my religion. Okay, why? What do you hope to get? I go to church, I go to mosque, I go to temple once a week, and we have all kinds of prayers, Well, analyze those prayers, and you'll see that it's something for you, something you want, and it's not unbroken. I go once a week, and then the rest of life, I'm doing something else. That doesn't work. That's not real dharma, So that bhakti that is unbroken, unmotivated, simply for the sake of adhokshaja, which is all Krishna, and which continues day and night that's real dharma. So, but when you get to the point of pure devotion, there's no more dharma. You see? In other words, the gopis in Vrindavan, the cowherd boys, they're not performing any dharma. Everything they do is just an act of love for Krishna. They're already beyond dharma. You see, that's why he says, sarva dharmam padachajya. Mame kam sharanam. Just surrender unto me. That's all you need to do. If you can do that, your need for dharma will be transcended. That's really what he's saying. Now, in one sense, there's also Sanatan Dharma. Prabhupada talks about it in the introduction. Sanatan Dharma, Bhagavat Dharma, which kind of merges into pure devotion. So our eternal nature, if you take Dharma to be your nature, your natural activity, is to serve Krishna with love. So it would be situated in that. But it doesn't have the character of what we have here in this world, in Dharma, which is a process, is something you do out of duty. Because you don't have spontaneous attraction. You're not in your natural position. So you say, okay, the Dharma has been taught to me here from Bhagavatam and Nectar of Devotion. Okay, get up early, surrender to the Guru. I have to get and so many things. And when I confront my mind, is it telling me, no, don't do this anymore? I said, no. My intelligence is saying, yeah, I got to do it. if I want to progress, if I want to advance, So that's dharma. That's your dharma. And because in bhakti you're coming to the point of being naturally situated. That's the other meaning of dharma, that which sustains your existence. So we're always servants, serving the body, serving our boss, whatever. When that service attitude is directed toward Krishna, that's your Sanatana Dharma. Otherwise, you're always serving. You can't get away from it. But you don't realize that. You're serving your body and you think, well, I'm enjoying. But you're really serving your senses. And there's a backlash to that. Right? So why? Why are these things coming upon me? Because you're rebelling against your real service. So that's that verse, which appears twice in Bhagavad Gita, is the essence of the sadhana and the sadhya, what you get by this simple point. But it's not thought to be a Paribhasa Sutra because it's not. It doesn't contain this essential statement of Krishna that I am God. See, these 4 verses in the 10th chapter begins with Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam pravartate. Those 2 lines, that's your sambandha. It means everything. I'm the source of everything. Everything emanates from me. Now, there's no redundancy in the Bhagavad Gita. There may be some repetition, but that sounds redundant as one state. But it's not, because he's saying from my point of view, I'm the source of everything. From your point of view, everything emanates from me. You start from everything. You see it? Just like this phrase, I was thinking last night. Our whole movement rests on this fact, this idea, which Rupa Goswami wrote a whole book to prove. And that is, Krishna is God. We kind of think, well, yeah, we know that. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. It probably wrote the book, right? But who believes it? Except devotees who've been convinced, right? So Krishna is God. That's one statement. And then another one is God is Krishna. Now, do you see the difference? Krishna is God, meaning that, okay, yeah, I've heard of Krishna. Or you grow up in India, yeah, I know Krishna, he dances with the gopis and goes and like that. No, that's God. He's the creator of everything. He's your eternal master, everything you do. Oh, okay, now I understand a little more. God, he's the source of everything, see? Or, I believe in God. But did you know that God is Krishna? He's the all-attractive Lord, he has these qualities and so many things. You see, so where you start from is very important. There are 2 different emphases there. It sounds like the same statement, but it's not exactly. Krishna's Kaviraj goes into this in the first, in the Adi Leela, describing what to say first, the subject or the predicate. It's very important to get the subject first, then describe it. Anyway, I'll point it out to you if you're interested. So in this case, if you want those essential verses of Gita, you go to 10, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Because he has the sambandha, Krishna's God, then what to do about it? Bhakti. Those who understand this, the wise, they worship me with all their heart. How? Matchitta, Madgata Prana. They put their mind on me. That's always first. Matchitta, their life energy is directed to me, their activities. And, key element, they're always getting together and talking about me and enjoying tushti and ramanti, satisfaction. And what's the result? When I see that, from my side, from the heart, Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. For those who are always worshiping me in love in these ways that I'm describing, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. And then he describes that in a very personal way. Tesham evanukampartam ahama gyanajam tamaha nashiyam yatma bhavasto gyanadipena bhasvata. Anukampa. These words, even you analyze them, it's a whole different dimension. So anukampa is one of the words for compassion. But think about it a minute. Kampa is one of the ecstatic symptoms, right? Trembling, you see. So trembling is a sign of high emotion. And it can be one of fear. That's one way people tremble, in fear or cold, in something negative. So, anukampa, here, Krishna is saying, I'm feeling that for my devotees, who are talking about me, glorifying me, who understand I'm God, and practicing bhakti. And so I'm empathetic to their suffering. Anukampa. Tesham emanokam, for the sake of showing their mercy, I destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness of ignorance. A little more metaphorical. And those are the 4 essential verses. Again, we're back to nescience and knowledge, darkness and light. It's essential. So that's coming attractions for mantra 12 next week. And he's going to talk about those who worship the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, and those who only seem to. Because the whole point of this Isopanisad, this portion, is so you can see what is real knowledge, what is dark, what is ignorance, and to be choosing knowledge at all times. All right, I'll stop there. Any questions, comments? Oh, the mic. Use the mic.
The work that you mentioned, that's Laghu Bhagavatamrita, right? Where the Laghu Bhagavatamrita.
Laghu Bhagavatamrita.
Where you said he proves that Krishna is God and God is Krishna.
Yeah, the whole purpose of that book was to prove that Krishna is God. And you think about so much of Prabhupada's preaching, that's what he's doing. And Bhagavad Gita is a lot of that. I am the source of everything. I am this, I am that. In other words, there's a lot of that emphasis there. Because without that understanding, there's no way of entering into bhakti. One has to really believe that and understand it. So, yeah, because it's not a given. In the Vedas, in the Vedic culture, people are worshiping all kinds of people. Is it Shiva? Even the idea of Narayan, different aspects of Krishna. What's the supreme? He's proving that Krishna in Vrindavan, that's the supreme personality of Godhead. That book has been published in BBT. I gave it to you. Okay. Anyone else? Dharmaraj? No, he wants the mic.
Thank you, Prabhu. How do we know what has been set aside as our quota, and so we don't encroach upon others' property like that?
Yeah. Well, it depends on what your situation, social situation. The householders need more, obviously. That's the glory of brahmachari life is suddenly is you realize how little you can get along with and still be satisfied. And really, it's such a burden, lifted. This whole idea of I remember, when you join the ashram, when I joined Brooklyn, there were plenty of ladies around. There were a whole bunch of married couples, mostly the artists, And everybody, to me, they all look like angels, the men as well as the women. But then, the idea is, okay, well, after you're there for a while, you're established Brahma, you get initiated, The marriage option is there. But I joined a little older, and I'd already been through some experiences, and that really never crossed my mind that would be an I'd go down. The whole thing was like, let's generate Krishna. I was getting it. And you can see how, and Prabhupada says very plainly that it's a concession. It's not bad. There's a way of doing it really nicely. Obviously, we have great examples of householders, both in the movement and in history, who are great devotees. But clearly, it's more difficult, and it's more difficult in this age than in previous age, like in the Vedic culture or in India. Now it's getting more westernized. But there's all this support group. In other words, just the family alone. It doesn't just mean you, your wife, and your kid, driving around in a truck somewhere trying to find a place. No, it's what to speak of, your own little nuclear family. There's a whole, the cousins and everyone. They live nearby. They work nearby. It's a different kind of culture. Now, there's still a traumatic decision to make at a certain point whether to renounce. It's obviously more difficult to renounce such entanglements when you've spent like 25 years, which is ideal, of building them, rather than when you haven't formed them yet. So in a sense, the dysfunction of Western culture, where you had everybody scattered and the nuclear families broken up, and is an advantage. That's one of the reasons why it was a more fertile ground for Prabhupada to originally plant the seeds of bhakti than India. Because the big thing you shouldn't realize, it's the family attachment. You know, that's a huge obstacle. But when that family attachment has like been attenuated, or somebody's, you know, the hippie on the street or something, they've already like, you know, distanced, and the family may have already said, oh, okay, you know. Now that can be a very miserable condition when you don't find Krishna. And oftentimes, and that's what happened. What happened to all those hippies? They went back home, you know, and they got into the business somewhere or other. They were reabsorbed into society. But the idea, that critical time, that's why I think this is Krishna's arrangement that brought Prabhupada right in the middle of the 60s. If he'd come in, you know, the middle of the 50s, it would have been a whole different scene. I mean, not so favorable. So, how do we know? Well, you know, especially when you're amongst other devotees, you can see examples. You can see what it's really necessary to have, and you can also experience, to a large degree, how you can be satisfied with so much less. When you're really practicing Krishna consciousness, you're getting there, you're learning, and you know, you're preaching and getting into the kirtans. That's a very satisfying life. I remember so much, you know, my first 2 years, the blessed 2 years when I was just living in the ashram in Brooklyn. And morning and evening kirtans, we had the evening program, you know, Kiba Jaya Jaya Gora Chander. You know that song? I never really learned the thing by heart, but I know the meaning because I never let it. But it was like after a whole day, you know, the Mangalarti is a different mood. The lights are down, you know, and it's very meditative. You know, deities, the night outfit, not so. But the evening, there's you know, the glorious dressing, the lights are up, the devotees are all there, and it's just like this big celebration. And then after that, the class, and then go downstairs, hot milk and Krishna book, and take rest. You know, next day, get up again, and go. And you realize I don't hardly need anything. A lot of kirtan on the street. This is the big fallacy of I think what we've developed. Not enough chanting Hare Krishna. I'm telling you, that's what breaks down all kinds of barriers, doubts, you know, problems. If there's enough Hare Krishna chanting together, and that's a central part of the day, so many problems are resolved. And you realize how happy you can be with practically nothing. Although I got to admit, I did pray for proper shoes. Because I read the, did you hear this? You heard this story before. Did you hear it? Maybe you forgot it. So, I'm reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Maybe I was reading it for proofreading, I forget. But there's a section of the Adi Leela where he goes through a lot of the associates of Lord Chaitanya. You know, different branches, those Advaitas and Nityanandas. So you come across Vikreshwar Pandit. Now, Vikreshwar Pandit is not described in great detail, but he was a great dancer. And it describes that he could dance for 3 days straight, you know. And Noche said, oh, if I was like you, I could be Garuda, I could fly. You know, he really liked Vikreshwar Pandit. So when I joined, I was a little bit an athletic, you know. And I was thinking, I'd like to do that. You know, I'd like to be able to do that. So, because we're going out every day, 3 hours a day on Harinam, you know. I said, but I got to have the shoes. I can't just wear these flip-flops. So we had a shoe room. And amazingly, in the shoe room, you know, okay, people leave their shoes, you know, I think they may get a little ticket and then go to the Sunday feast and then get their shoes. But somehow the shoe room collected shoes. People would come with shoes and leave without shoes. I don't know. But there were a whole bunch of shoes in that shoe room. So I started looking through and I found a couple, you know, a pair of sneakers that just fit me perfectly. I said, oh, this is Krishna's approval. I wore those shoes, I would go out. And I was jumping up and trying to dance the whole time, 3 hours straight. But it was a big war between that and my love for halva. You know, I put on a little weight, not a lot, but it was got a little bit different. So, but that was just a blissful time, you know, and practically I didn't feel I wanted to leave or anything. So, and so much, you know, you didn't have to worry about things that, you know, you're given to you. So it depends on what your situation is. Basically, if you're a householder, if you're a brahmachari, it's much less. But the more practical, you know, everyday experience of that, where you're confronting that Isopanisad, is how much you really need prasadam in order to be healthy, you know, which is overage, which is going to be damaging for you. That's the struggle. But that that's a central principle, and Prabhupada explains in the purport how that in the larger society, people's claiming proprietorship over more than they need, it's obscene. These guys, not just the billionaires, but the multi-millionaires, there's no end to it. This is the greed is one of the gates leading to hell. And generosity and charity is one of the gates leading back to Godhead. Krishna says, don't give those up, even if you're in the 18th chapter. Even in austerity, sacrifice, and charity, are three elements that always should be there. So even you see, you're working and you're really giving a sacrifice for Krishna, for his pleasure. That's the source of all happiness. Water is the seed of bhakti. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.